The morning started like any other aboard the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Coffee brewing in the mess hall, routine scans of empty space, and the usual complaints about outdated equipment. Alex Rivera had been watching the void for 7 years, tracking asteroids and solar flares that threatened the outer colonies. Nothing ever happened out here in the dark between stars. Then the sensors screamed. Alex dropped his coffee mug and rushed to the main console. The display showed impossible readings, thousands of ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. Not human ships. These vessels were massive, sleek, and unlike anything in Earth's databases. "Get me Fleet Command," Alex shouted, to his crew. "Priority 1 emergency." The alien fleet arranged itself in perfect formation. Each ship gleamed like polished metal, their hulls inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at. The smallest vessels dwarfed Earth's largest battleships. The command ship at the center stretched for kilometers, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Within hours, the transmission came. A face appeared on every screen across human space. The alien looked almost human but wrong in subtle ways. Skin too smooth, eyes too large, movements too precise. When it spoke, the words came in perfect English, though no human had ever taught it the language. "Primitive species of Sol system," the alien began, its voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I am Admiral Thorne of the Dominion Conquest Fleet. Your time of isolation has ended." The message broadcast to every human world simultaneously. In homes, offices, schools, and spaceships, 12 billion people stopped what they were doing to listen. "We are the Dominion. For 3,000 years we have brought order to this galaxy. We have integrated 437 species into our empire. Today, we extend this gift to humanity." Alex stared at the screen, his hands shaking. The alien's casual tone made it worse somehow, like discussing the weather instead of the fate of human civilization. "You have 30 standard days to make your choice. Submit to integration and surrender all weapons. Your species will be relocated to designated worlds where you will serve the greater good of the Dominion. You will be fed, housed, and protected. Your children will be educated in proper galactic citizenship." The Admiral paused, letting the words sink in. Across human space, government officials scrambled to emergency meetings. Military commanders activated defense protocols that everyone knew were worthless. Or you may choose resistance, in which case, we will demonstrate why 437 species chose wisdom over foolishness. Your worlds will burn. Your people will die. Your civilization will be forgotten. This is not a negotiation, this is mathematics. Tactical displays flooded the transmission. Detailed scans of every human world, defense station, and warship. The aliens had been watching, for years, cataloging weaknesses, counting weapons. They knew the location of every human settlement down to the smallest mining outpost. Your weapons are primitive. Your ships are slow. Your population is small. We calculate your chances of successful resistance at 0.3%. These are not the words of an enemy. These are the words of a teacher explaining reality to a child. The transmission shifted to show battles from the past, other species that had chosen to fight, worlds reduced to glass, fleets scattered like leaves in a hurricane, proud civilizations becoming footnotes in Dominion records. The Kithara thought their crystal cities would protect them. They were wrong. The Vorlani believed their warrior culture made them strong. They were wrong. The Centaurans trusted their advanced technology would save them. They were wrong. You are not special. You are not chosen. You are not different. Alex felt sick. The casual display of genocide presented like a school lesson. The complete certainty in the alien's voice. This was not the first time Admiral Thorne had delivered this speech. 30 days to choose wisdom or foolishness, peace or war, life or death. Choose carefully, humans of Sol. This is your only warning. The transmission ended. The alien fleet held position at the system's edge, waiting with infinite patience. Their sensors tracked every human movement, every ship that launched, every message that passed between worlds. On Earth, President Maria Santos called an emergency session of the Planetary Council. Representatives from every human world gathered in the great chamber beneath Geneva. The mood was grim. Intelligence reports painted a clear picture. The Dominion fleet outnumbered humanity's entire navy by 20 to 1. Their weapons could destroy Earth from orbit. Their shields could stop humanity's most powerful missiles. "We have to surrender," said the representative from New Beijing. "We cannot fight gods." "They are not gods," snapped Fleet Admiral David Kane. "They are bullies, and I have never met a bully who respected weakness." The argument raged for hours. Surrender meant slavery, but resistance meant extinction. Save the species, or save their freedom. Live as servants or die as humans. President. Santos listened to every voice. She read every report. She studied the tactical displays until her eyes burned. The mathematics were clear. Humanity could not win this fight. But something in Admiral Thorne's words had struck her wrong. The dismissive tone, the casual arrogance, the assumption that humans would kneel without question. The alien spoke of humanity like they were insects barely worth the effort of conquest. That night, Santos stood on the balcony of her office, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the alien fleet waited for humanity's answer. Expected humanity's answer. Assumed they knew what humans would choose. She thought about her grandfather who had fought in the water wars, about the colonists who left Earth with nothing but hope and determination, about the miners who had died building the first space stations, about everyone who had ever refused to accept that something was impossible. The next morning, President Santos made her decision. Not the safe choice, not the smart choice, not the choice that would save the most lives, the human choice. She activated the emergency broadcast system and stood before the cameras. Behind her hung the flags of 12 worlds, 12 colonies built by human hands and human dreams. "People of Earth and all human worlds," she began. "We have heard the Dominion's offer. They promise us life in exchange for freedom, safety in exchange for dignity, peace in exchange for surrender." She paused, looking directly into the camera, speaking to every human alive. "Our answer is no." The silence in the Dominion command ship was absolute. Admiral Thorne stared at the transmission feed, his perfect composure cracking for the first time in centuries. Around him, his officers exchanged nervous glances. This had never happened before. President Santos continued her broadcast, her voice carrying across every human world and deep into space where enemy sensors recorded her words. "You call us primitive because we stumbled into space only recently. You call us weak because our ships are few and our weapons simple. You offer us the choice between chains and death." She stepped closer to the camera, and her eyes blazed with something the Dominion had not encountered in their long history of conquest. Pure, stubborn human defiance. "We choose neither. We choose war." The words hit Admiral Thorne like a physical blow. In 3,000 years of expansion, no species had ever rejected the Dominion's offer. Some had tried to negotiate better terms. Others had begged for more time. A few had committed mass suicide rather than face integration. But none had simply said no and meant it. Santos raised her voice, and her words carried the weight of 12 billion souls. "You speak of mathematics and probability. Let us give you some human mathematics. We have faced ice ages that should have killed us. We survived plagues that claimed half our population. We rebuilt from the ashes of global wars. We turned a dying planet into a garden and reached for the stars with nothing but fire and metal." The broadcast reached every corner of Dominion space. On subjugated worlds, other species stopped their work to listen. The Kythera in their crystal mines, the Vorlani in their factory cities, the Centaurans in their research facilities. For the first time in memory, they heard someone tell the Dominion no. "You call our weapons primitive, but they were forged in the crucible of necessity. You call our ships slow, but they carried us between the stars. You call our resolve weak, but it is never broken. Today you learn what every tyrant in human history has learned too late." Santos spread her arms wide, embracing the flags behind her and the billions watching across space. "Free humans do not kneel. Free humans do not surrender. Free humans would rather burn bright and die free than live dim and enslaved. You want war? Then war you shall have. The transmission ended. Across human space, the response was immediate. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels switched to military production. Mining stations revealed hidden weapon caches. Research facilities activated projects that had been theoretical until this moment. Admiral Thorne finally found his voice. Destroy them, he ordered. All of them. Leave nothing alive. The Dominion fleet moved forward like a force of nature. Their formation was perfect, their advance unstoppable. They had done this dance before on 400 worlds. The outcome was never in doubt. But as they crossed the outer edge of the solar system, the first surprise waited. What looked like a simple asteroid mining platform suddenly blazed with weapon fire. Antimatter torpedoes, crude but effective, slammed into the lead Dominion ships. The damage was minimal, but it was damage. The humans had hurt them. Impossible, muttered Thorne's tactical officer. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. More. Asteroids came alive. Ancient mining equipment transformed into missile launchers. Ore refineries became fortress strongholds. Every piece of human infrastructure in the outer system had been secretly converted into a weapon of war. Dr. Emma Chen watched from her hidden laboratory deep inside Titan. For months, she had been preparing for this day. Converting civilian technology into military applications, turning mining charges into warheads, reprogramming construction robots into soldiers. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Across the solar system, humanity's hidden defenses activated. What the Dominion saw as a primitive industrial infrastructure was actually a massive trap. Every satellite was a sensor. Every space station was a fortress. Every civilian ship was a potential kamikaze bomber. The first real battle erupted near Mars. The human fleet was outnumbered 50-1. Their ships were smaller, slower, and carried weapons that barely scratched Dominion armor. By every logical calculation, the battle should have lasted minutes. It lasted 6 hours. Human pilots flew like madmen, using suicide tactics and desperate maneuvers that no sane military doctrine would approve. They rammed damaged ships into enemy hulls. They detonated their own reactors to take out Dominion vessels. They fought with a ferocity that shocked even their enemies. Commander Tom Bradley led the defense of the Mars orbital stations. His ship, the Defiance, was a converted cargo hauler with improvised weapons bolted to its hull. It should have been destroyed in the first exchange of fire. Instead, Bradley used the ship's industrial equipment as weapons. Magnetic cranes to grab enemy fighters, mining lasers to cut through armor, cargo bay doors that opened to vent atmosphere and debris at pursuing enemies. They fight like animals, reported one Dominion captain. No tactics, no discipline, just rage and desperation. Then treat them like animals, Admiral Thorne replied. Exterminate them. But the humans adapted faster than anyone expected. They studied captured Dominion technology and reverse-engineered it in days instead of years. They learned from every battle, passing knowledge between ships and stations. With desperate efficiency, young engineers worked 20-hour days, modifying weapons and shields. Farmers became soldiers overnight. Children barely old enough to work operated communication arrays and sensor networks. The entire human species had become an army. The Dominion's perfect advance slowed to a crawl. Each human position had to be taken by force. Each victory cost them ships and time. Admiral Thorne's reports to High Command grew increasingly frustrated. The primitives refused to accept defeat, he transmitted. They fight beyond all logic. Their casualties are massive, but they continue to resist. On distant Dominion worlds, other species watched the battles with growing amazement. The Cathera whispered in their crystal caves. The Vorlani gathered in secret meetings. The Centaurans exchanged coded messages. The impossible was happening. Someone was fighting back. President Santos broadcast again from her bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva. Half of humanity's space infrastructure had been destroyed, but her voice carried the same defiant strength. To our enemies, we say this. Every ship you lose teaches us your weaknesses. Every battle makes us stronger. Every day, you remain in our space proves that humans do not break easily. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to the galaxy itself. To our fellow beings under Dominion rule, we say this: freedom is possible. Resistance is not futile. The choice between slavery and death is a false choice. There is a third option: fight back. The message spread through Dominion space like wildfire. On subjugated worlds, production quotas began to slip. Equipment mysteriously malfunctioned. Transport schedules suffered inexplicable delays. The seeds of rebellion, planted by humanity's example, began to sprout across the galaxy. Admiral, Thorn requested reinforcements for the first time in his career. The primitive humans were taking too long to die. 3 months into the war, the galaxy held its breath. On the crystal world of Kith Prime, workers in the deep mines stopped their excavation to listen to contraband radio transmissions. The humans were still fighting, still broadcasting messages of defiance across space, still refusing to die quietly like every other species before them. Elder Rith clicked his crystalline claws against the cavern wall, a nervous habit from his youth. He remembered when the Dominion ships first arrived. In Kithera space 2 centuries ago, the choice had seemed simple then: submit or face extinction. His people chose life over pride. Now he wondered if they had chosen wrong. The human broadcasts painted a different picture than Dominion propaganda. These were not the desperate final screams of a dying race. These were tactical reports, strategic updates, requests for civilian volunteers. The humans spoke as if they expected to win. "Impossible," whispered Worker Nil. "The Dominion cannot be defeated. They have ships that crack worlds." But Ryth had seen the casualty reports that Dominion commanders thought were secret. Human ships, burning in space, yes, but Dominion vessels burning alongside them. The great Admiral Thorn, conqueror of dozens of worlds, requesting reinforcements like any common military officer facing a real war. On the industrial world of Vorl, factory, Supervisor Grix watched his production lines with new eyes. For 50 years he had built Dominion warships, efficient, deadly vessels that carried conquest to new worlds. He had taken pride in his work, in serving the greater good of galactic civilization. Today he miscounted the parts inventory for the 3rd time this week. Small errors, nothing that would be noticed immediately, just enough to slow production by a few %. Across Vorl, other supervisors made similar mistakes. The great industrial machine of the Dominion began to sputter. The human war was spreading beyond human space, not through conquest, but through example. Species that had forgotten rebellion began to remember. Workers who had accepted their fate began to question. Citizens who had never known freedom began to dream. Admiral Thorn studied the tactical displays in his command chamber with growing frustration. The human resistance should have collapsed weeks ago. Instead, it grew stronger. They learned from every defeat, adapted to every strategy, found new ways to turn their weaknesses into weapons. "Status report," he demanded. His aide, a young Dominion officer who had never seen real combat before this campaign, consulted his tablet with shaking hands. "Casualties are at 37%, Admiral. The humans have cost us more ships than the last 5 conquests combined." Thorn struck the display screen with his fist, cracking the surface. "They are primitives. They should not be capable of this level of resistance." But deep down, he knew the truth. The humans were not fighting like other species. They were not trying to minimize casualties or preserve infrastructure. They were fighting total war. Every human was a combatant. Every civilian facility was a fortress. Every surrender was a trap. On the remote colony world of New Geneva, the Dominion learned this lesson the hard way. The planet held only 50,000 colonists, mostly farmers and miners. It should have fallen in hours. Instead, it became a nightmare. The colonists had prepared for months. Every farmhouse was a bunker. Every grain silo was a weapons cache. Every tractor was a bomb waiting to explode. When Dominion troops landed, they found not civilians but guerrilla fighters, who knew every hill and valley. Colonel Beth Williams had been a teacher before the war. Now she led the resistance from hidden caves in the northern mountains. Her students, children barely old enough to work, served as scouts and messengers. Her farmers had become snipers. Her miners had become saboteurs. Remember, she told her, fighters before each raid. We are not just fighting for New Geneva. We are fighting for every human who will ever be born. Every shot we fire tells the galaxy that freedom is possible. The battle for New Geneva dragged on for weeks. Dominion forces controlled the cities during the day and lost them at night. Their supply convoys were ambushed. Their communications were jammed. Their soldiers began to fear the dark and the silence. From his command post, Admiral Thorne watched the reports with growing unease. A single agricultural world was tying down an entire Dominion battle group. The mathematical certainty of victory was dissolving into the bloody reality of guerrilla warfare. The situation worsened when other species began to stir. On Kith Prime, mining quotas fell short for the first time in decades. On Voral, factory accidents increased by 300%. On Centauri Beta, the great research stations suffered mysterious computer failures. The Dominion High Command issued new orders: crack down harder, increase security, make examples of troublemakers. But the rebellion was spreading faster than they could contain it. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Dominion faced resistance on multiple fronts. Dr. Emma Chen worked in her hidden laboratory, surrounded by wreckage from captured Dominion ships. Human engineers had learned to read alien technology like a book. They tore apart force field generators and rebuilt them as human weapons. They reverse-engineered hyperdrives and installed them in human fighters. The key is adaptation, she explained to her team of exhausted scientists. They build their technology to be perfect. We build ours to be changed. They cannot adapt as fast as we can improvise. Her greatest project neared completion, something the Dominion would never expect because no sane species would attempt it. A weapon that would turn humanity's home star into a bomb. The Sol Protocol, insurance against final defeat. But even as she worked on doomsday devices, Chen watched the tactical displays with growing hope. The impossible was happening. Other species were finding their courage. The Dominion's perfect order was cracking. On Earth, President Santos addressed the global population from her underground command center. The planet's surface was scarred by orbital bombardment, but the human spirit remained unbroken. Citizens of Earth and all free worlds, she began. Today marks 90 days of resistance. 90 days since we told the galaxy that humans do not kneel. The cost has been terrible. We have lost friends, families, entire worlds, but we have also achieved something no one thought possible. She gestured to displays showing Dominion casualty, reports and production shortfalls across their empire. We have proven that the Dominion can bleed. We have shown the galaxy that resistance is possible. From the Cathara crystal mines to the Vorlani factory worlds, our example spreads. The broadcast reached far beyond human space. In hidden gathering places across 100 worlds, other species listened and learned. The word spread in whispers and secret codes. The humans were still fighting. The Dominion was not invincible. Freedom was possible. Admiral Thorne received the reports from across his empire with growing alarm. Minor rebellions on 12 worlds, production delays on 40 more. His perfect conquest machine was developing cracks. He opened a secure channel to Dominion High Command, his pride finally broken by necessity. Request immediate reinforcement, he transmitted. The human situation has become complicated. The response came within hours. A fleet 3 times larger than his original force. Enough firepower to crack planets and burn solar systems. The Dominion's full attention had finally turned to humanity. But across the galaxy, other species watched, the buildup with new understanding. The humans had forced the mighty Dominion to show its true face. Not benevolent rulers bringing order to chaos, but brutal conquerors terrified of losing control. The war was no longer just about humanity's survival. It had become a test of whether freedom could exist in a galaxy ruled by fear. And for the first time in 3 millennia, The outcome was not certain. 6 months after the first shot was fired, human space had become a graveyard. Where once 12 thriving colonies had orbited distant stars, now only radioactive ruins remained. The Dominion reinforcements had arrived with orders to end the war quickly and brutally. They were succeeding. Admiral David Kane floated in the zero-gravity command center hidden deep within Titan's icy crust. Around him, holographic displays showed the grim mathematics of defeat. Human fleet strength down, 70%. Civilian casualties approaching 4 billion. Production capacity reduced to scattered asteroid mines and underground factories. Yet somehow, impossibly, humans kept fighting. "Report from Proxima Station," called out Lieutenant Amy Foster, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "They're requesting permission to activate the self-destruct. Dominion boarding parties have breached decks 7 through 12. Kane closed his eyes. Proxima Station held 30,000 civilians, families who had fled there seeking safety. Now they would die rather than be captured. It had become the human way. "Permission granted," he said quietly. "Tell them they die with honor." The tactical display updated as another human stronghold vanished in nuclear fire. The Dominion had learned to fear human surrender. Too often it came with hidden bombs, poison gas, or worse. Better to kill them all from a distance than risk capture. President Santos no longer broadcast from Geneva. The city was glass now, melted by Dominion orbital weapons 3 weeks ago. She spoke instead from a mobile command unit, moving constantly, through Earth's underground tunnel networks. Her government had become a traveling circus of refugees and guerrilla fighters. "Citizens of humanity," she began her daily address. "Today we mourn New Shanghai, destroyed rather than surrendered. We mourn the hospital ship Mercy, which carried its patients to safety and death rather than slavery. We mourn 10,000 souls who chose fire over chains." The broadcasts had changed, no longer defiant speeches about victory, but somber remembrances of the dead. Yet somehow they carried more power than before. The galaxy listened to humans choosing annihilation over submission, and began to understand what freedom truly meant. Dr. Emma Chen worked alone now in her laboratory. Her team was dead, killed in the bombing of Research Station Alpha. The Sol protocol was nearly complete, but she wondered if anyone would be left alive to activate it. Earth's population had dropped to 2 billion. The outer colonies were gone. Humanity was dying by degrees. Still, she worked. Because that was what humans did. They worked and fought and died and never, ever gave up. "Final test sequence initiating," she told the empty room. The device before her was beautiful in its simplicity. A quantum resonator that would destabilize the sun's core. Not to destroy it, but to make it flare with controlled fury. A weapon that would disable every ship in the solar system without killing their crews. It was humanity's final card. A bluff so enormous that even she wasn't sure it would work. Across the galaxy, the human example continued to spread despite the mounting casualties. On Kith Prime, Elder Rith led his people in open rebellion for the first time in 2 centuries. The Dominion response was swift and brutal. Crystal cities that had stood for millennia were shattered by orbital bombardment, but the Kithera did not surrender. They fought from the deep mines with improvised weapons and desperate courage. They died by the millions, but they died free. On Voral, Supervisor Grix watched his factory burn. The Dominion had discovered the sabotage, the small delays in production, errors that had cost them precious time. His workers were being executed in the courtyards. Their families were being rounded up for deportation. Was it worth it? Asked his assistant as they hid in the ruins of their former workplace. Grix thought of the human broadcasts, of President Santos speaking from her underground bunker, of children choosing death over slavery. "Ask me when we are free," he replied. The Dominion High Command met an emergency session on their fortress world of Nexus Prime. For the first time in 3,000 years, their empire faced coordinated rebellion on dozens of worlds. The human virus was spreading faster than they could contain it. "The solution is simple," declared Supreme Admiral Corax. the Dominion's ultimate military authority. Sterilize every rebellious world. Kill them all. Start over with more compliant species. But even as he spoke the words, reports arrived of new uprisings. The Centaurans had seized 3 star systems. The Altarians had declared independence. Species that had been loyal Dominion citizens for centuries were suddenly remembering what freedom felt like. We cannot kill them all, argued Intelligence Director Vex. Half our labor force would be gone. Our industrial capacity would collapse. Then we crush the source, Corex replied. End the human war. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. Make it so terrible that no one ever tries again. The orders went out. Every available Dominion ship was to converge on the Sol system, not to conquer this time, but to exterminate. Nothing would survive, not even bacteria. Admiral Thorne received the new orders with grim satisfaction. The humans had cost him his perfect record and half his fleet. Now, he would have his revenge. The final armada assembled at the edge of human space. 10,000 ships carrying weapons that could burn worlds. Begin final approach, Thorne ordered. Kill everything that moves. On Earth, the remaining population prepared for the end. Not with panic or despair, but with quiet determination. They had fought the impossible fight and lost, but they had proven something important. Freedom was worth any price. President Santos made her final broadcast from the ruins of the Mount Rushmore Memorial. The carved faces of ancient presidents looked down on her, scarred by war, but still recognizable. People of Earth and all who listen across the galaxy, she began. This is likely our final message. The Dominion comes with overwhelming force to end our rebellion once and for all. We cannot stop them. We have lost. She paused, looking up, at the stone faces above her. Leaders who had faced their own impossible choices in humanity's distant past, but we have not failed. We have shown the galaxy that the choice between slavery and death is false. There is a third option. Fight back. Die free. Make your oppressors pay for every day of freedom you claim. The message broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every corner of Dominion space. On 100 worlds, other species listened to humanity's death song and felt their own courage stirring. To our friends among the stars, we leave this gift, Santos continued. The knowledge that the Dominion can be hurt, that their perfect order can be shaken, that free beings, fighting for what they believe in, can move the galaxy itself. She stood up, her small figure silhouetted against the carved monument. We are humanity. We came from a small world circling an ordinary star. We reached for the cosmos with nothing but dreams and determination. We chose the hard path every time it was offered. Today we choose it one last time. Dr. Chen activated the final sequence of the Sol protocol from her hidden laboratory. The quantum resonator powered up, its harmonic frequencies reaching toward the sun itself. In minutes, the choice would be made. Activate the weapon and blind every ship in the system with stellar fury, or let it remain a bluff and face extinction. She thought of her dead colleagues, of the billions already gone, of the children who would never grow up to see the stars. Then she thought of the other species watching from across the galaxy, the ones just beginning to remember what freedom meant. Her hand hovered over the activation switch as the Dominion fleet entered the system, weapons charging for humanity's final hour. The sun began to sing. Deep within its nuclear heart, quantum resonances triggered by Dr. Chen's device started a chain reaction unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not destruction, but transformation. The star's magnetic field twisted into impossible configurations, building energy for a controlled release that would wash across the entire solar system. Admiral Thorne watched his sensor displays with growing alarm. What are the humans doing to their star? His science officer, a brilliant Dominion researcher who had studied stellar mechanics for centuries, stared at readings that made no sense. It appears to be a controlled stellar flare, Admiral. But the energy levels are impossible. No species has ever achieved direct stellar manipulation. Impossible for anyone but humans, Thorne muttered. He had learned not to underestimate these primitives. They turned everything into a weapon, even their own sun. Across the galaxy, something else was happening. On Kith Prime, Elder Rith received an encrypted transmission that made his crystalline heart race. The Vorlani had seized control of their homeworld's orbital platforms. The Centaurans had declared the formation of a free systems alliance. The Yaka human rebellion had sparked a wildfire that was consuming the Dominion from within. The supply convoys from Nexus Prime are 3 days overdue, reported his aide. The Dominion garrison is running low on ammunition. Rith allowed himself a rare smile. While the humans drew the Dominion's attention, other species had been busy, sabotaging supply lines, disrupting communications, liberating weapons caches. The great machine of Empire was breaking down. On Vorl, Supervisor Grix led his workers in a desperate assault on the remaining Dominion forces. They had no military training, only improvised weapons and centuries of suppressed anger. But they had learned from human broadcasts how ordinary people could become extraordinary fighters. "For freedom!" Grix shouted as they stormed the command center. It was a human phrase now spreading across the galaxy, words that meant more than any weapon. The Dominion garrison surrendered after holding out for 6 hours. The factory workers, farmers and shopkeepers who had never fought a day in their lives had defeated trained soldiers through sheer determination. The human example had taught them that courage was contagious. In the Sol system, the final battle raged as humanity's sun built toward its climactic moment. The remaining human fleet, barely a dozen ships against 10,000, made their last stand. They fought not to win, but to buy Dr. Chen the time she needed. Captain Alex Rivera, promoted from monitoring station operator to fleet commander through the simple expedient of outliving his superiors, transmitted on open frequencies, as his ship Defiance took damage from 100 enemy weapons. "All Dominion forces, this is humanity's final message. You came to our space offering us chains or death. We rejected both. Today you learn what free beings are capable of when pushed beyond all limits." His ship's hull cracked under enemy fire, but Rivera kept transmitting. "We are not special. We are not chosen. We are ordinary people who refuse to kneel. Every species listening to this has the same capacity for courage that we do, the same right to determine their own fate." The Defiance erupted in nuclear fire, but Rivera's words continued to broadcast across the galaxy. They reached the hidden rebel bases on 50 worlds. They inspired new uprisings on 20 more. They carried a simple truth that the Dominion had spent millennia trying to suppress. Freedom was a choice available to anyone brave enough to claim it. Dr. Chen's hand trembled as she prepared to activate the Sol protocol. The stellar buildup was complete. One touch of the switch would release a burst of electromagnetic energy that would disable every ship in the system. Dominion and human alike would drift powerless while the galaxy watched. But she hesitated. The weapon was untested. It might work as designed, or it might destabilize the sun permanently. Earth could burn. Humanity could die anyway, taking their enemies with them. Then she heard Rivera's final transmission, saw the reports of rebellions spreading across Dominion space, realized that humanity's sacrifice had already achieved something unprecedented. They had broken the galaxy's chains of fear. She activated the Sol protocol. The sun exploded in controlled fury. A wave of stellar energy raced outward at the speed of light, carrying electromagnetic pulses that overwhelmed every electronic system. In the solar system, Dominion dreadnoughts went dark. Human fighters drifted powerless. For the first time in months, the space around Earth was silent. Admiral Thorne found himself floating in his command center as life support systems failed. Emergency power flickered on, but his mighty fleet was crippled. Thousands of ships reduced to metal coffins floating in the void. "Status report," he gasped. "All ships disabled, Admiral. The stellar pulse overloaded every system we have. We're running on backup power only. Weapons offline. Shields down. Engines dead." Thorne stared at the tactical display showing thousands of dark ships drifting helplessly. The humans had done something impossible again. They had turned their own star into a weapon that spared lives while claiming victory. Hours passed in eerie silence. Then new ships began arriving. Not human vessels, but others. Cathara crystal ships that gleamed like jewels. Vorlani industrial haulers converted to warships, Centauran research vessels bristling with improvised weapons. The Free Systems Alliance had come to claim their victory. Elder Rith's voice crackled over the communication channels. Admiral Thorn of the Dominion, in the name of the newly formed Galactic Federation of Free Worlds, you are ordered to surrender your fleet and submit to judgment for crimes against sentient life. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Thorn found himself on the receiving end of an ultimatum. The irony was not lost on him. The species he had dismissed as primitives had orchestrated the downfall of the greatest empire in galactic history. President Santos emerged from her underground bunker to find Earth's surface lit by the aurora of the stellar flare. The sky danced, with colors that had never been seen before, a celebration of humanity's survival against impossible odds. Her communication system crackled to life with messages from across the galaxy. The Cathera offering to share crystal-growing technology, the Vorlani proposing industrial partnerships, the Centaurans excited to exchange scientific knowledge. The galaxy was free, and everyone wanted to talk to the species that had made it possible. But the message that mattered most came from Admiral Thorn himself. His proud voice was subdued, carrying the weight of defeat and perhaps understanding. President Santos of humanity, he began. I have conquered 400 worlds in service to the Dominion. I have never faced defeat until today. Your species has achieved something I believed impossible. You have united the galaxy against tyranny through the simple act of refusing to surrender. Santos listened carefully. This was history being made with every word. I offer the unconditional surrender of all Dominion forces in this system. But more than that, I offer my understanding of what I faced. You called yourselves ordinary people who refused to kneel. Perhaps that is what makes you extraordinary. The formal surrender took place aboard the crippled Dominion flagship. Representatives from dozens of newly liberated worlds witnessed Admiral Thorn's signature on the documents that ended 3,000 years of empire. Dr. Chen watched from her laboratory as rescue ships moved to assist the disabled vessels. Her Sol protocol had worked perfectly, disabling the fleet without destroying it. But more importantly, it had given the galaxy time to organize its response. The age of empires is over, she told her rescued colleagues. What comes next will be built on cooperation instead of conquest. 6 months later, President Santos stood before the inaugural assembly of the Galactic Federation. Representatives from over 200 worlds had gathered to draft a new charter of galactic civilization, not based on the submission of the weak to the strong, but on the equality of all sentient life. We gather not as conquerors or conquered, she addressed the assembly, but as free beings choosing to work together. The human story is not unique. Every species here has the same capacity for courage, the same right to self-determination, the same ability to choose freedom over safety. She looked out at the diverse gathering. Crystalline Cathara, mechanical Centaurans, the proud warriors, of Vorl, and dozens of others, all free because humanity had shown them it was possible. Our message to the galaxy remains unchanged, Santos continued. Free beings do not kneel. Free beings do not surrender their dignity for the promise of security. When offered the choice between chains and death, free beings choose a third option. They fight back. The assembly erupted in applause that echoed across the galaxy. On Earth, the cities were being rebuilt. On Kith Prime, crystal spires rose toward the stars. On Vorl, factories produced goods for trade instead of conquest. The galaxy was healing. Admiral Thorn, serving his sentence as a historical consultant to help prevent future tyrannies, watched the proceedings with something approaching admiration. The humans had not just defeated the Dominion, they had created something better to replace it. In his private quarters, he composed his final report, not to Dominion High Command, which no longer existed, but to history itself. The species known as humanity possessed no superior technology, no advanced weapons, no natural advantages over their opponents. What they possessed was something rarer and more powerful. The absolute refusal to accept that freedom was impossible. They answered our offer of peace through submission with war through determination. In doing so, they faced the ruin of their civilization, but achieved the liberation of the galaxy. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Every military strategist will study this campaign. Every philosopher will debate its meaning. But the lesson is simple. When free people are pushed beyond all limits, they become capable of moving. The cosmos itself. The humans did not win through strength, they won through example. And that example will echo through history until the last star burns out. The transmission was broadcast across the galaxy, Thorne's final gift to the species that had taught him the true meaning of courage. It reached every world, every station, every ship where sentient beings lived and worked and dreamed of better days. The message was simple, but revolutionary. Freedom was not a gift granted by the strong to the weak. It was a birthright claimed by the brave from those who would deny it. And once claimed, it could never be taken away. Humanity had answered peace with war and faced the possibility of ruin. Instead, they had found victory beyond their wildest dreams, not just for themselves, but for every free being in the galaxy. The age of empire was over. The age of freedom had begun. And it would endure as long as there were people willing to stand up and say, as humanity once had, "We do not kneel."